Hello again, lovely people, and welcome to the Company Road podcast. This week I want to introduce you to Sam Yee. Sam's story is a unique one. It's a blend of passion, product, people, and purpose, all the P's. She's a born and bred Aussie Sydney sports fan, known for living life to the absolute fullest. She's total pocket rocket with contagious energy, and I warn you in advance, you won't be able to listen to this one on double speed. Sam spent her professional life in marketing, sponsorship, digital strategy, audience measurement, analytics, product. And she's got a lot to say about the world of sports, in particular, sports and media. She's been instrumental in driving change through those industries. She's worked at The Guardian, Channel 7, Foxtel, KO, and the AFL. And you might think, yes, they are male-dominated businesses. So this episode is a real trailblazer's tale, one of true inspiration, where you can hear about all the results that extreme empathizing, people empowerment, and just really hard work can deliver. So when we recorded this, I was in the middle of a really challenging transformation project. And I've got to say thank you to Sam, as she really lifted me out of this funk. I took a leaf out of her book and I threw myself back in to get things fixed. So if you're unsure about where your career could go right now, or if you're stuck in a bit of a rut, this episode is definitely for you. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Samo, you've had a listen to the Company Road podcast, and you reckon I'm sounding a bit more Aussie these days, right?
Yes, I definitely hear the Aussie accent coming through for sure. What have we done to you?
I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I'm talking on these channels and I'm sounding more Aussie. But it's been about 6 years since we moved over. But Sam, we've known each other for quite a few years, for most of our careers actually. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the show as a former colleague, but also as a close friend. And for the people that don't know you, I think you're one of the most inspirational and energetic and driven and tenacious and curious and successful women that I've probably worked with. So I know you're going to light up the show today in your own way. As an observation, obviously you live and work at an incredibly fast pace. I remember when you were living in London, you were visiting a different European city or country every weekend, or sometimes 2 a week or whatever it was for at least 2 years. And I've got incredibly fond memories of hearing those stories. And most people couldn't believe how much you were able to pack in during that time. So your career moves have been similarly impressive. How would you describe yourself to people who don't know you?
Yep, I would say I'm that type of person that lives life to the fullest. Definitely have, I guess I would say, contagious energy, and I would say, quite overflowing optimism, I guess. That's funny hearing that back, actually, because I just realized that, that's pretty much me in most angles of life. I try to pack everything in. I want to do as much as possible that I can possibly do. And it's not so much of a fear of missing out. It's just more, there's so much to explore. Why not go and get it when you can? Yeah, so that's probably how I describe people personally. My personal profile to people. I'm definitely a glass overflowing type of person. Doesn't take much to get my energy up to that maximum point. But I feel like some people might come and chat to me because they need a bit of that spark of energy, and I'm more than happy to share it and give it.
Is it just always on? I mean, when does the energy start and stop?
I've just always been like this. Apparently my parents said that I didn't cry that much. Maybe when I really needed food, and I am a foodie, so I do like that. But really, I was always a smiley type of person, like smiley type of baby. I was always organizing something from primary school. When I had birthday parties, I used to say, let's have 3 birthday parties because I don't want the other school classes to miss out. Everyone should share in the joy. So I just made that happen, made my mum make 3 cakes. Interestingly, I know what I need. I could go and explore, a whole new country on my own and feel energized by that. I don't always have to be around people, but I am an extrovert. I do get energized by people around me, socially, working wise, or just in general. A group of strangers, throw me in there. I don't mind. I find everyone fascinating and curious in their own way.
And what was the journey? I mean, how did you feel you were received into the working world when you first started out?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. Because I really wanted to work in sports, and it wasn't really, it's not a typical path for a young Asian Australian woman to go into sports, culturally. I doubled down. I really wanted it bad. So, the energy and enthusiasm, hurling myself, I should say, into whatever I could possibly do and learn off the back of my sports marketing degree at university. I mean, that enthusiasm was welcomed welcomed, obviously at a more junior level, because obviously I was willing to take on whatever came my way to learn and sort of get ahead. Later on in life, though, it was interesting as I evolved in my leadership role and approach and profiles and things. For a while there, I didn't think it would be accepted. Actually, I thought too out of the box, too crazy. The types of leaders that I saw around me were pretty much white men in suits, to be honest. And there's a certain behavior and certain way of speaking and that kind of thing. So I never actually saw myself as a leader for a period there. But then I did have I would guess quite transformational experience, I suppose, at one of my jobs where I met some female mentors and coaches where they sort of reframed my definition of what a leader could and should be, as well as sort of my ambitious goals. And so then I realized I did actually have a unique knack for bringing people together. And it's not just bringing people together, it's solving really hard problems or conflict. I found myself in a facilitator role and problem solving role, not just for 15 people, but suddenly it was 200 people from big departments coming to me to try and work out what they needed to do. And then it was only sort of through that experience that I realized I have my own leadership style. It's in the Sam Yee style. It can still be social and extroverted. And, I would say I have a youthful approach, I guess, which I think some people, they're a bit shocked when they find out my age, I guess, or how long I've been working. But that's where that's my style. That's the way, I keep people up and support people. And also, when things are really hard, you don't have to, smooth over it. Some things are just really hard, but we've got the energy of everyone, and I can sort of bring that to the table. Then we'll get there, kind of thing. So I would say I certainly feel like unique in my own way, which I think everyone should. Because that's the amazing thing about people bringing different diverse leadership styles together and getting the best out of people.
Yeah. I want to talk to you a bit about the concept of being an entrepreneur, only because it's what we talk about on this show, but around barriers to change and how you get over some of those. You mentioned the people, the sizes of the teams that you've had to engage and, control in one way or another, or help and support in one way or another. What are some of the things that you do to get around barriers that get in the way?
So, yeah, I was thinking about this concept a lot because I never saw myself as an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur until I guess you put the term in front of me. I guess the way I've always approached things is when I come into a new environment and there's there's a big vision and goal that they're trying to achieve. When I'm thinking about my role and then the bigger picture, the types of barriers that I see are really more about people and mindsets and fear, actually, because it's not that people can't, you can throw people in a room and start to think of new ways of doing things. You can do that, but what stops them from doing that? Oh, it's not their position, it's not their role, that's not how we do things. We've always done it this way. And it's those kind of is more attitudes and mindsets to sort of open the mind a little bit to go, well, let's just test an experiment. And the way I got around these things is I actually came from analytics, insights, research type of roles, and then I fell into product management. So I always used that evidence base to be able to have that conversation. And I actually used to say, the word strategy was always overused in my mind. So I always used to think that I wasn't a strategist until one mentor of mine, a boss of mine, said, you are a strategist. You're an evidence-based strategist. And I was like, actually, yes, that's exactly how I do this. So, for example, if the vision is clear and the measures of success are clear, then all I'm doing is bringing in new initiatives or new ways of new ways of approaching a problem that still meets that criteria. It's just a different way to get there, and here's some evidence of either competitors doing it or a different way of thinking that can show how it can lead to new innovations, or whatever it happens to be. My market research and analytical mind sort of kicks in to have a seat at the table to have that conversation. Because if it's just me without the evidence, that's a little bit harder. It's just sort of me having a new idea on its own. Whereas we focus on also building the relationship and the evidence, all I'm asking for is a bit of a test and experiment, and let's look at the results. And if it works, great. And if it's not, then we try again. So that's how I've always sort of approached the barriers, I guess. And I think as I later in life, I realized the real importance of being able to influence people. And I did this amazing persuasion course, or art of persuasion course, I guess, where I was sort of, I found the line a little bit interesting, because I thought, when is it manipulation or I'm persuading? And then I realized it was really persuading with positive intent. But that comes with a lot of things. That comes with sort of empathizing with the other people that you're trying to convince, and knowing yourself, the credibility stuff, earning trust, building relationships, as well as actually doing the work itself of what you're actually trying to achieve, and getting buy-in that way.
I mean, there's so much in that response. I think that actually what you say about evidencing is really key. Obviously in getting people behind a certain purpose or a certain mission or vision. Do you apply that lens when you're hearing a vision or a purpose or a mission or a strategy played back to you for the first time? And how do you respond when you can see there are gaps in that evidence base?
Yeah, I mean, well, I probably don't jump into it straight away. I think the first thing is to really listen and observe, understand what's happened before, understand what's happening, right now, but also understanding what the real, future vision that they're trying to get to, so you can set that path. Yeah, in terms of like identifying gaps, like, whilst sort of information gathering, let's put it that way, and also finding, talking to people in the company in different departments on their take on things, because quite interestingly, sometimes they actually have the answer between them, but they never collaborated together, or they never had that conversation, and things like that. So when I hear a strategy, or maybe I'm starting in a new role, and it's sort of the path has been outlined, and I'm probably super excited about where they want to go, and I'm like, what can I do? What's there already? How can I empower the people to also do that? Yeah, it's sort of like a bit of a analytical assessment, sort of, in my own sort of documentation, I guess. But how I'd approach it with the people, wouldn't be necessarily sharing that documentation, just be sort of sharing observations, getting their input, refining that, and thinking about how they would fill the gaps as well. It's not me coming in to fill the gaps and go ta-da. I often see my role as going, with the amazing diverse group of people that we've got, how best could we tackle this and facilitate that environment and the conversations to be able to do that. And I may very well have some ideas, but I won't just go, right, I've joined and this is what's going to happen. I just throw it open and say, how, is this the thing? How can we improve that? This is based on my knowledge and experience, but combined with the knowledge and experience of everyone else in the room, that could be so much better, or even pivot to something else. So
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? It must be a hard balance, because on one hand you're very energetic, you're setting the scene, you're setting the vision, you're a leader, and on the other side, you're a manager. You have to obviously empower people to feel like they're being included in the process as well. What's your take on that, and how do you work in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you can do it without the people. I mean, I guess it depends what type of leader you are, and what you think is going to get you to success. But I always tell people, like, organizations are just groups of individual people trying to do amazing things together, and it's actually really hard. So the role of the leader is to facilitate an environment to be able to do that. So yes, there's hard business goals, I'm sure, which I'll always be transparent with the team, because we're in this together. We, if there's a hard goal that needs to be met, a hard objective that needs to be met, it may be a lump it or like it situation, but we can get there together. We can do that in a more efficient way. We could do that in a more innovative way. Like we're all employees in an organization, but when you let freedom, sort of, you allow freedom and enable people to do what they're good at, and also almost push them a little bit into uncomfortable zones where they can grow even more, and they'll be shocked at what they can do in a safe environment. You'll tackle other problems that you didn't even see before, proactively solve problems that you didn't see before. And I only have eyes and ears of one person. Imagine if you have the 20, 40, 50, 200 people, but they're in an environment where they have trust, an environment where they know who they need to speak to. They can foresee who this might impact, so they'll get them in. And people are trusting that they are being accountable for the roles that they've been hide into, which is also a role of leader. If that is not clear and then people get confused, then it gets like a little bit spaghetti. So typically in my teams, I want to be very sure about what the business strategy is. I used to give my job description to my team because I want them to know what I'm on the hook for. And I go, if you want to get ahead, well, here's the bigger thing that I'm on the hook for, and I'll be more than supportive and encouraging to advance the careers and growth of the people in my team, because it's good for them, it's good for the team, it's good for me, and it's good for the organization, because we should be under the same umbrella. Obviously, it gets a little bit murky if senior leadership are a bit murky about their own vision, right? But typically, that's how I've actually had that evidence-based conversation. I link it always to, okay, what was the strategic goal of this business? Where do we want to be in 3-5 years? Okay, even though my role is this, actually the bigger picture is, you know what, if we work with that department, or we initiate this new project, we'll really, really achieve that big company vision. It doesn't really matter that my role, in writing is this, but that's how you sort of get the momentum of new initiatives and get people involved as well. Because it shouldn't just be me coming up with the new initiatives. It's, I want to hear from the people and not just my team, having those, I guess, opportunities where you can do that in complete safety. There's no silly idea. There's no, you never know what you're sitting on, especially if you restrict people just to that, job description.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for uniting people around that common purpose, but also you have to have a little bit of a locus for change. You have to almost unsettle the situation just a little bit to get people thinking and moving outside of what they would traditionally do. Is that something that you see, and what kind of steps or processes or things do you use to get people thinking a little bit more laterally and probably a bit more broadly?
So yeah, that I feel like I've experienced this a lot, mainly because I've worked in a lot of traditional media companies going through some sort of digital transformation, but the traditional media companies have built up their success over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and some people are still working there 20, 30 years. So that sort of more fixed mindset and fear that I was talking about, is really prevalent there. It's that thing about, when I just mentioned about fear, I'm not trying to make them feel intimidated by the situation, but it's more about showcasing almost like a hope of a possibility of a different type of situation that can evolve. Because typically speaking, the situation would have been more, like I said before, it's always been done this way, and I'm used to this as a comfort zone safety net. But it's that promise of, but it could be it could be much better. Isn't that something that you want? Isn't that something, don't you want to grow? Or, there's much more possibilities for growth for yourself, for your team, etc., and for the business. You'll even be rewarded for it by, sort of thinking about things a little bit differently. Again, it also just comes down to evidence as well. Sometimes, and this might be controversial, but some people's goals are to have like more recognition or PR type things, right? And so I will actually say this is a way to do that, because I don't really mind what their motivation is. It's not illegal or anything, so that's fine if that's your personal goal. But I will say something like, if you think about this a bit more innovatively, there'll be a press release about that. You'll be spearheading this initiative, and then all these new, business opportunities will arrive, and you'll have to spearhead those, because this is what part of that is. And it's sort of just, it really comes down to a bit empathizing with those people and what their motivations are or what their fears are, to give them the promise of what could be. Like I said, it sort of all comes down to people for me. For some reason, somehow over my career, I've been able to earn and build people's trust quite quickly. And that's been a great advantage, because then I can have these vulnerable conversations. If you come in and sort of try and run everything and go, right, we're just going to do this, they're not really, I know it's a buzzword or buzz phrase, but they're not really on the journey. But I genuinely want them to be on the journey, because I don't want to be holding anyone's hand or be telling anyone what to do. I just want them to be on a journey and not fixed in one part of the road, because then I know things are happening, things will be moving, things are shifting, things can adapt. There's some agility. Otherwise, it really is how it was before, and then there's no movement. And as you can tell, my energy, I can't be static.
Yeah, I can tell. We'll see how we go. I mean, we've got how long left to record this before you need to do something else?
Sure.
No,
Actually,
yeah.
I probably have 2 other meetings today.
Oh, all good. Yeah, just thinking about that and getting to know people and around empathy. are there certain things that you would recommend that people consider as doing in just getting to know people? Because I think that in business, as it's driven by ceremony and ritual and
Mm.
meetings, lots of meetings, and you could just get caught up in that. You could do that day in, day out. You could do it for weeks and weeks and years. But what's the secret to kind of letting that run, putting it to one side, but then also getting to know people at a deeper level?
Oh, that's a big one. I think I'm still trying to unpack that myself, like over the last few months, to be honest, and how I've done this over when I've been self-reflecting over my own career. But I guess I can speak for myself, where I would say that I have a genuine care and curiosity for the person I'm talking to, and whatever's important. Like I've worked with a lot with let's say video game developers. Now I don't play video games, and I know nothing about that, or even the car mechanics. It doesn't really matter what it is. The point is that it's important to them, and I'm thoroughly interested in why it's important to them. It's just like how I love sports, and I can talk about sports forever and ever, and I get really amped up. And some people hate sports, and but they kind of like the joy that I get from from talking about it, if you get what I mean. So yeah, it's really anyone that's come across my way, whether they were a new employee or even if I was a new employee in a new environment, it's still actually the same approach, because it's still it's still a person. Like, it's not that's why they call it people and culture, not human resources anymore. It's not just a resource that's sitting next to me. There's a human person that's more than just their job description. And the thing is, if I can hack into what really drives them and what they're really interested in, or find commonalities. Like I said, we don't have to have the same interests at all, but I've been able to I guess establish and have really good relationships, say, with technology developers who would typically are probably more introverted than myself. Now, you would think that they just want to stay away from me, like, oh my gosh, it's too loud or whatever. But it's never been that. It's just I'm genuinely interested in what they're coding, how they're coding it. Hey, when you say it like this, if I did an analogy like this, would that make sense? And they'd be like, yeah, that's amazing. I'm like, great. I'm going to tell the execs. I'm going to say that you did that, and that's amazing. And it's just sort of establishing that bond, um, and or that relationship, that sort of trusting relationship, so that you can have those conversations that you need to have, hard ones and collaborative ones. They're really fun ones, and there's also really hard ones when you have to give tough feedback, I guess, but it will be taken because the intent has already been established. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, I say that from, I'm naturally extroverted social person, so I think I was always sort of welcoming, and so I was always organizing the lunches, like, just like I was in primary school. I'm always organizing something, and I'm always introducing people as well, because I feel like people, I guess I do that because I feel like people think that they're sometimes a bit alone, and there's other people that sort of can connect in different ways. But I really do feel that even if you're not a leader, even if you could do that, I mean, to be honest, if you did that, you might be an informal leader, because you're able to build these relationships around you and earn the trust and influence people positively, or have tough conversations, etc. Then you'll probably be offered a leadership position. But yeah, I find, and it's just a respect thing with no judgment. Quite often I've had people in my team where, they'll say, is that good or bad? Is that right or wrong? And I'll never say there's good or bad or right or wrong. It's just what you think. Like, what do you think? Where do you want to be? And you only can, sort of compare yourself to where you want to be in your standards. There's no right or wrong from me, or good or bad. My only thing is about people. Good thing is I enjoy people. I enjoy talking to a lot of people. And interestingly as well, I guess because I'm such a talker and a fast talker at that, and energizer, I've really tried to focus on, the active listening part, because I know I can talk 100 miles an hour, and, if you want me to talk forever about sports, I can do that. But really, it's about really listening to the other person, not just the words, but how they're their actions, and how their expressions, and all that kind of stuff, and observing them in other situations. And that's how I've been able to sort of pick up all that, that person was either defensive of those things, or like that sparked an energy in them, and in a safe way, especially in a leadership role, actually seek the diverse opinions of people in that safe way, because extroverts, they'll dominate as I am maybe dominating right now. They'll dominate the conversation, but you need to make sure there's equal safe space in the channel that they prefer, or other people prefer. Sorry, that's not an extroverted type person. And it might be visual, it might be verbal, it might be written. There's so many different ways to be diverse, I guess. But really observing that in whatever team you're in, you'll get the best of everyone, and they'll be the best of themselves because you've worked out how they, what natural strengths they have, or if you push a little bit, a few buttons, this whole new other opportunities can come out that they may not have seen themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can be an incredibly powerful force for change and for momentum when that happens, because you're obviously taking everyone's views and agendas on board and what they really value deep down, and then you're applying that to how collectively, that can be applied within a business context as well. I'm wondering as well, you mentioned two words there, which I think are interesting. One is around judgment. And one is around respect or disrespect. And I'm wondering, if you're going through that exercise and you're actually, you're taking the time out to really actively listen to a leader and what they're saying and where they want to go, or somebody in your team, but you come across something that's perhaps not what you were expecting, and you find it, a little bit disrespectful, or if you find that your approach to something has been judged in one way or another, how do you respond in that situation? Because I'm sure that doesn't happen a lot of the time, but if it does, then, do you find it confrontational? What's your response there?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's confrontational. I mean, obviously, it doesn't, if you're in that kind of experience, I would say it still comes down to the ability to be able to give feedback to that person, or whoever's, I guess, driving that experience for you. And I think a lot of people are scared of that situation and will just look to avoid it and maybe just leave that team or leave that boss or leave that company, and not deal with that. I'm not that type of person. I like to know that I've exhausted all options and give it a chance. Because again, it's a people thing, right? So, if I've ever felt disrespected, I guess I will have that one-on-one conversation, but I will prepare like hell for it as well. So that sort of, trying to understand where the other person is coming from, and those kind of things. But in that conversation, I need to be able to say, when you said or did this, it impacted me like this. I would like to get to here, and are you willing to work with me on that? And if it's not, then that's a different decision. But hopefully, I've appealed to the more human side, that and I like to believe in people for the most part, that I believe that they still have positive intent, and pressure can get to you. Other things are happening in their lives that allow that to happen, or other beliefs and things like that. So I personally want to give it a chance, more than one chance as well. Like I'm the type of person that really tries to make the most of everything possible, before sort of setting on another path, because I think it's possible. In all honesty, I will also say, as a female working in sports media, other people may have had other male dominated industries as well, I've been disrespected in very recent times, actually, and I just didn't say anything, because there are certain battles that I need to pick and choose, and some are just so low that this is not worth, like, it's not going to achieve anything. I'm not going to change that person's mind in one day. We need to get on with the work. But there will be ones where I need to say something, because it's too misaligned with my values. I'm not saying that other little experiences are not aligned with my values, but if I reacted to every single one as a female of what happens to me, I will never be working. I will just continue on. So the good thing is, I'm finding some really great male colleagues that sort of speak up for me, because for me, it's really quite sad. I've been so used to some of that experience that I just let it go. It doesn't even bother me anymore. I mean, it does bother me, but I think I've been so hardened to it that I'm like, yeah, let's let that one go. I don't need to consider that. But I think some people, I guess, what they don't see, the invisible part, is all the work I have to do going into meetings knowing that could happen to me. So I have to be thoroughly prepared about the meeting. I really think about the people in that meeting, where they're coming from, their angle. Maybe they'll be a bit assertive, maybe they'll be disrespectful, maybe they'll be aggressive, maybe they're, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't see that work, they don't see the homework that I have to do, to battle that, as well as say what I need to say and convince and persuade and protect a team and support a team and try to drive change and facilitate something new and be excellent at my job. So the other point is sometimes you may have evidence, but also another advantage is when you're actually very credible and excellent at your job. And I would say, if I don't say pat myself on the back, but I guess I would say a lot of previous roles and peers and bosses would say that, I certainly over deliver, have high performing teams, I expect high performance. That helps me have that conversation and drive change in that way as well. But that is a lot of work to do to prep for all of that and do the thing. And yeah, I'm not going to lie that there's those kind of challenges have happened over my career. But I would say that as the leadership role evolved, that influence, that relationships made things much easier. It was so much easier to navigate those experiences.
Yeah, so starting out different situation, obviously, to when you can be part of that conversation and almost shoulder to shoulder with some of those other leaders that potentially you'd encountered that type of person earlier in your career as well. But
that's right.
But actually being in a leadership position gives you that influence and almost the badge to be able to say, no, actually, come on, let's not do it this way.
Yeah. Well, also I would say with that though is, I didn't never, like I said, I never saw myself as a leader. It actually took someone, I guess some peers to say, I had no one reporting into me. There was no authority. There's no title or anything like that. And it's not supposed to be about those things. But this person said to me, thank you for being a great leader. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, what? I'm not a leader. I just, I work solo. I'm part of this team. And she said, no, people come to you for advice. You influence the group in a positive way, etc. And just sort of described all these things. And then the title, yep, it gives you some credibility, but also for me to be the authentic leader that I want to be, it's almost like, yes, for the C-suite that does that, and board members and things that requires that title, but how I actually act as a leader, just generally in the team, I'm trying to almost do it as if I didn't have the title, because I don't want them to do things because of fear of my title and that level, that authority, and that's what's supposed to do. It's more, do you know what? If I empower you guys, or you guys and girls, I should say, and transgender, as much as possible, I can make myself redundant, because the best compliment is that someone takes my role and everyone's moving up and everyone's doing great things, and I don't need to be there anymore.
And I mean, that's incredibly powerful. I mean, there's so much in that point, just in and around. I suppose it's the perfect storm in a way. Your own motivation, your belief in authenticity, and the fact that you've worked in some of these environments that has come together, and you've been able to, to be part of those situations. A lot of people would have backed down, and in terms of your own resilience and strength, what's driving that?
Good question. I think earlier on, I love sports so much that dream will never die. So I think in my mind, I basically said to myself, I want to work in sports because I figure I'm going to have to work a decent chunk of my life. And if I work in sports, I'm going to have a great life. It's going to be, I'm going to enjoy work, which I have. But at the same time, it's sort of, now that I can reflect back, I sort of had this sort of tunnel vision of like, working in sports, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. But then what I realized is all the doors in my face, I guess, and all of the really trying to be patient and play the long game. That is something that I learned a bit later and that I was comfortable with. I think I was really impatient as a younger person, going, why can't we do this? Why aren't we doing this? I saw things very black and white. And as soon as I realized there was gray, the whole world opened. And I realized there's like quick wins, there's some long wins, you're going to lose some battles. But at the end of the day, it's not life or death. So it's work, and it's challenging, and it's fulfilling. And, I realized actually in my last 5 roles or so, I was actually headhunted for new roles. It was kind of strange to me, because in my early part of the career, I was the type of person to have a job alert on every single sports job in Australia, senior and junior, from when I was 20 years old, because I wanted to make sure that I had the skills for the future, skills for now, make sure I'm aware of all the opportunities, which might say for some obsession and analytical. But anyway, it worked for me. But then, like I said, in the last 5 roles, I kept going because clearly there was a gap to be filled. Clearly these organizations were asking, they couldn't quite think of the role because it wasn't really a traditional role. It was more like, we have these big transformational goals we're trying to do for our business, and you have the capabilities and the mindset to craft a role around you to, sort of set that in motion. And so part of it was, I think generally in self-reflection, now I'm on a career break right now, that I realize that I'm a high achiever. I used to, because I didn't think I was a very good academic student or anything like that. And that's what I used to associate with high achieving. But I realize that I do set myself big goals, work-wise, person-wise, and I'm okay with failure. But I want to strive for big things and do really well. Carry the weight of the responsibility to try and bring everything that I've got to do that. So yeah, it's interesting that the resilience also comes from just really believing in what you think is right as well. It's whether it was leadership or what the big vision is. Like I maybe naively, but I've joined let's say sports teams, I guess. Or digital product teams in sports and media, really believing in what they're trying to do, because I'm a sports fan. I want these amazing experiences. And, let's truth be told, I've got 50 sports apps on my phone and they're terrible. Like we could do so much better. Even for people that don't like sport, I would love them to just even get one bit of joy that I get from sports, and they're probably not getting it from the digital products out there at the moment. So that always spurred me on, because even though you don't want to be biased as the customer persona type person, but I really want this for other people as well, or even as a new way to get kids involved, or other way. I love basketball, I love tennis, or we both love tennis actually, but I would love other people just to even experiment a little bit in there. And so that's what sort of kept me going in it from a more personal passion point of view. Yeah, and then like I said, it's sort of the high achieving thing. Like when I start something big, I really want to try and finish it, or have progress and that kind of stuff, with there's loads of failures and things that don't work out along the way, but that's supposed to be part of the journey, so that's okay. Yeah, it's just sort of really wanting the outcome. And that's all, when I come into new roles, I go, what is the big dream here? And I go, yep, let's go for that. And we might never get there, that's okay. It's more the journey to get there. But as long as we all believe in that actual, like, a dream that we're trying to get to, and I'll be all right with that.
And then you've got the energy to carry everyone else along the way, along the journey.
That's true. That is also an advantage. I don't go slow, that's for sure. And also, I'm also quick to, that's part of the thing. It's like quick to give it a go. If it doesn't work, it's okay. Moving on. Like no problems there. It's better to try and learn and fail than not do anything at all, in my view. And also it's also about efficiency. Like actually, I remember when we met, like at an agency in London, to me, I was just trying to improve systems, because I'm like, this is a complete waste of time, or there's repetition here. I was just trying to optimize stuff so we can get to good juicy stuff, and then more stuff happens and I do it again. So sometimes that's what I think about when I see a team and I go, okay, let's carve off that. We're spending too much time there. Like near enough is good enough. When I was younger, I probably used to say I was a perfectionist or something, and I wanted everything's black and white, etc. And I was like, no, don't need any of that. Now it's just gray. Gray is the best color in a weird way. It's murky, but more things come out of the gray, which is really strange actually for me, because I was very extreme left brain, and here I am now doing. I don't know. As soon as the people stuff sort of came in, it moved my dial, and now I've got sort of more things to tap into, I guess, and there's far more opportunity than that sort of quite black and white approach. But yes, the energy does help, but also just carving out time for other people to say, you don't need to see that to 100%. You can, if you just go to 90%, that's near enough, good enough, we're clear on the outcomes there, that gives us a 10% to do this little thing, just to try it a little bit, and then you sort of balance it out there. So it sort of started out with efficiency and improvements, because I used to say to people, I do not want to ever do the same thing twice. Like that is stupid. so find a better way. And even if that was me, or find a new way to make things faster. I used to do that a lot in the research thing, sharing information systems and making, like, you can imagine lots of different siloed teams collecting all this information, they're not sharing it with each other. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like that means everyone's doing it 15 times over, because it's not one sort of distributed insights or analytics or something like that. So it started off like that, but then it then became sort of maybe like an efficiency problem to fix, and then it more became like, here's this strategic big vision that we have, which is a really big challenge to sort of meet, and then how do we approach that? And it's sort of the same. I'm like, okay, we'll enhance here, we'll optimize here, we'll do something new here, we'll cut that fat there, and then hopefully, use the energy to get people to be excited to either own that, not be scared to contribute to that, be happy that they're not doing repetitive work, unless of course there are some roles that are good for that and some people enjoy that, and that's good too, each to their own. But yeah, it's sort of assessing that situation.
Because you were talking about a lot about sport, and I was thinking about that just as you were describing what, in your answer, because sport can be incredibly repetitive, but usually there's some incremental process or gain, or like a shot or this or that. It feels like you are doing the same over and again, but you're actually learning from doing it over and again, and you're applying that to a new version of what that could become
It's
in your
incremental,
practice. So it's not like everything is repetitive forevermore, because if you did stay still, then you'd never get any better. I mean,
No,
look at
you
Andy
just get the
Murray and
same
any of the
results.
tennis players.
That's right. Exactly. Someone will come up with some new stroke, and it'll be named after them or something, a new type of serve or something. And, who knows, they get grand slams out of it or something.
That's it. I mean, you're a sport lover, sport nut. What what is the sport that business can learn from the most? If I could ask that question, it's a bit of a big one, bit wacky.
God, that's a big one. I will say though, the analogy in terms of product management though, which I found very useful when I was exploring definitions and interpretations of product management, of which, by the way, I don't think there's just one, but I really liked the NFL quarterback analogy, which was because I related it to the product manager, where you're trying to win a game, and you've got a coach that actually probably has some authority, and you've got all the different members of the team in different positions, and you as the quarterback, you don't have any formal authority. You've basically got to use your influence and your relationships with all these people to figure out whatever tactics you got to do to win the game. And I really like that, because it's the thing about, like I said before, that not the formal authority type situation. And I guess if I extend that to a business, if the leaders and owners of a business sort of truly let the quarterbacks of the team and the coaches and people to do the roles with freedom and safety, then they will probably win the game for you. Like, they will figure out new ways to do it, and they all have accountability, but the way that they collaborate with each other and think of things, like, actually it reminds me of one of those NFL movies. I can't quite think of it, but they come up with some crazy play, and wins them the game. It's that kind of thing. Like, who's coming up with that, and how did that even enter their mind? Or and it required a bit of banter between one person and another person to come up with that play, and then it takes someone to execute it or whatever. So that's the one that comes to mind. I want to think about the one, because I do like that question. Actually, you'll probably find me doing it for like 20 sports next time we chat. But
No, all good. We answered it really well. You only had to think about it for a split second, then you were straight in.
Well, I think about those things a lot.
It's an analogy that can probably stretch across a number of sports, and people have done that, obviously.
Yeah.
But really good. I think a lot of it is to do with mindset, isn't it? And you've talked a little bit about people being fixed or rational, over rationalizing. Sometimes it's about growth and seeing opportunities, and you have to kind of know when to flip between one and the other. A lot of people prefer to talk about growth mindset because it's it's more aspirational, and you end up thinking more freely and in a more visionary capacity. But there's a role for fixed mindset too. So what's your take on those two things?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I think I had a conversation with I'm always out meeting people, and I hadn't heard of the concept of growth mindset, and she was saying to me, "You have a growth mindset." I'm like, "I do." I'm like, "What does that mean?" Because I guess I was getting frustrated with maybe it was not necessarily doing the same things, but just not moving fast enough, and not trying different things. It's interesting, because most of the roles I've been in have been in roles that they're trying to transform and do some big things, I guess. So I don't think you can do that without a growth mindset, as you're trying to make such big shifts and big change. I think there's certain industries and certain roles where you do need to have the fixed mindset, or when you're not in a business position to be able to like you're actually in a defensive position and you just got to protect whatever you got to protect and do what you got to do. And sometimes I used to say that to some, there are some things that you don't like to do at work, but this is not, you get paid to do this thing. And I would just be transparent with the team. I know that we don't want to do this. I know that this is like the most unfulfilling part. I'm going to help the team as well, but 10% of our time we have to do this crappy thing because we will never be in position to be able to do the growth stuff if we don't do this, and we're going to have to protect that part. But what I would also say is to sort of go, how do we prevent being in that position again, so that we don't have to be sort of drawn back into that stuff. But sometimes you just got to, that's when you were talking about the entrepreneur. I mean, there's just commercial business things and legality and regulation things that you need to be aware of. Like that's the environment that you operate, so you can't ignore that. I've always found it also an advantage to be, I think my dad's an accountant, my mum worked in bank, so it's sort of like I got the commercial things in me. There's a commercial reality, right? So we're not just, if we're all doing it for our dreams, then we wouldn't be working for a company, we'd be doing something else. So yeah, I feel like it does have its time and place, certain business situations, but it depends the type of person you are, by the way. Like maybe well, I wouldn't even say government. Still feel that government needs their own innovation growth, but certain people and certain roles may gravitate towards those kind of things. But here's the real sort of revelation or the insight is, if you walk into a company and you see unhappy people, they're like complaining, they're like, oh, this problem's been here for 5 years, oh, this is always done this way, then they're unhappy. They're not I wouldn't say they're fulfilled fixed mindset employees. They're not happy with where they are and what they're doing. So it's sort of like transform, or I guess trying to bring in that growth mindset, to bring in that little bit of hope, whether it's 5% to start off with, or if it's been mandated by the big company that, hey, we've got to do this big transformation, then you might have more leeway because you have the company support to bring in bigger things. But if it's smaller things, that's good too. It's just sort of, adapting to the I guess the business priorities and the people that you have. And also you can have both. You can have some people that prefer to have the, not, I don't want to necessarily always just say fixed mindset, but maybe a more a more, like operational, standard type role, and they're really happy to do that, and you can make that work. That's also a good thing. Like that's equally important. There's some people just like to do that stuff, and you go, great, equally valuable member of the team. And then other people might be go, I don't, I'm not like that at all, and they want to take more, the bigger space over here, and you go, great, I want to give that to you to drive that, because that's naturally in your wheelhouse. And they can learn things from each other as well, like fixed growth mindset or whatever you are on the continuum, because there's things you can learn from both. That, and when I talk about respect and no judgment, like I'm not saying, oh, growth mindset is the only way everyone needs to be, or you never be fulfilled. Like it's not for me to say that for other people. Again, it's just more, hey, we're a group of diverse people, we're working together, what's going on with everyone, and how can I use that, or how can we utilize that more individually and together to do what we're trying to do. And we find just like the NFL analogies, everyone has their role and their team, their special teams or defense or offense, whatever it happens to be. Anyway, I don't know enough.
We're not going to get started on the football conversation and why it's called football.
I was just trying to bring it back,
But yeah, I mean, just in terms of finding out people's preferences for that, do you feel it works better one-to-one or in a group? Sometimes there are different assessments. There are team canvases that get made in workshops, and there are bonding experiences here or there, away days. What's kind of a good formula there, do you think?
Well, put it this way, I love those things but that's because that's the type of stuff that I'm interested in. Like I love doing profiling things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, it's not black or white, it's not 100% true, but it's like holding a mirror against yourself, right? And I'm just self-reflecting. I'm like, oh, that is me. I'm like, oh, I don't think that's me. Oh, that is me. And it just helps me understand, be aware of how I think I am, and then I kind of look for feedback and I mean, I don't seek it out; it just kind of comes to me. But when people sort of comment on what you're good at, or you seem like really nervous about this and that, and I go, yeah, you're right. I wonder why that is, But that's me personally, I'm very much that way inclined. I mean, a lot of people have never even asked those questions. It's actually really scary. So certainly I wouldn't say in a way day, fixes that up. And doing, in a team environment could be really very embarrassing, scary for a lot of people. So I definitely think it's a one-on-one thing. And I definitely, like I said before, people will only share with me if I've earned their trust and they feel safe and they can be vulnerable. And I'm not going to tell everyone, hey, that person, they got stuff going on, like I'm not, that's not the point. The point is to help them understand themselves and how to make use of that, or where they, work on their strengths. Maybe there's gaps that they would like, maybe they'll say, quite often, like a more introverted person than myself will go, oh, I'm never going to speak in front of people. Like, you don't have to speak in front of people, but you can get your message across in different ways. Let's figure out a way to do that. And that's great, because you don't want the same old people talking all the time in the same channels and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think it's a one-on-one thing. And I think it's also just the ownership on yourself. Like if you want bigger and better things for yourself, then you might, need to think about what you're going to do about that. And part of that just starts with you. And especially unless you're, working solo, even if you're working solo, you're still working with other people. If you're really trying to influence a team and you're really trying to get initiative and you're really, trying to, succeed in that project, the more you can know yourself and the more that you can sort of recognize other people, then you'll be able to figure out how to have that honest conversation in that safe environment. Also fun, exciting ones where everyone's like, oh, some creative facilitated, brainstorm or something, or creative problem solving, like, when it really gets exciting, like that super works, and that's good. But I think even more importantly, in a weird way, it's actually the basis is when you need to have the hard conversations and say it without the emotional stuff and without knowing that it's in a positive intent and with respect, etc. If you can do that, you'll get through things so much faster. Because what I've found is that most of my work, I guess, as a leader is more unpacking that more emotional intelligence stuff rather than their actual skills and their knowledge set, because that can be learned that way. But you don't just suddenly learn how to self-reflect on yourself and suddenly learn how to empathize with other people and sort of figure out how you're going to connect you to them in that influential way. That takes time and practice, and I'm still practicing. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it, but that's an ongoing thing. But I also find that fascinating because that's why I love meeting people, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it works at different levels. Obviously, you've got people that work within a smaller group, and they might have a close group of trusted peers where some of the things you described might, be openly discussed or be quite comfortable in a way. But then there will be other people that they wouldn't be comfortable with sharing that information with. Obviously, you can tell from who goes for coffee with who, and that kind of
That's
thing.
right. That's
what's
right.
going on. It suddenly ladders up, and obviously, from product management point of view, you're relying on several individual teams often to come together. You're facilitating all of that, but then at an organizational level, you're thinking, well, how do I make all this work harmoniously? How can we enable almost an inclusive design culture?
Yeah.
How do you think it works well, sort of through, I guess, the macro all the way down? Are there any big secrets or big I guess initiatives that would help in establishing an inclusive design culture?
That is a really interesting question because, again, I don't want to give the sort of rose-colored glasses view.
Mm.
Like I said earlier, I feel like sometimes a bit naively, like I really, really believed in some of the visions and dreams of some of the teams I've joined, and I don't know if everyone was really on board because they haven't been as transparent with me. There's probably some other financial pressures, board pressures, shareholder pressure. There's other things, so it makes it harder when you don't know the full picture to really get there. But my thing is around accountability. So, I mentioned earlier that I shared my JD with a lot of my own staff because I just want them to know what I'm on the hook for. This doesn't actually happen, but I feel like if you did that at a macro level, like from boards and in every single position, then you'd be able to have that conversation to make sure that the transparency is there and the alignment is there all the way through. Because I think what I've experienced is what I think the expectations of a certain role is, or what I think they're trying to achieve is actually different, but it's just not said. And, I'm not saying that it's got to be all this peachy keen, dream world, but the more that you can be transparent about what the dream is, what the measure of success is, what real outcomes look like, and then the roles are accountable to support that, or have the conversation if you're doing things that are not supporting that, then you can see it all the way through. I think in larger companies, it's obviously hard. I've been in large organizations, I guess, where I sort of just realign my expectations, going, for this department or this team or this project, okay, these are the expectations, this is realistic. But I guess as I got to more senior positions, and you're obviously closer, like there's a lot more complexity, which my preference is to be transparent about all of that complexity, so that you're all working to the same problem, not just a sub part of that problem, because then they can understand the certain decisions you have to make, why you have to do the crappy stuff or why you have to do XYZ. That way you can be aligned. But it's very important that the actual vision and outcomes in the first place were defined. And if it changes, that's okay, but make sure that everyone is being communicated to the same way and they interpret that the same way. And then again, you're free and empowered. You should be free and empowered to do what you need to do to get there.
Yeah. So it's not just about the strategy. It's not just about the vision and the purpose and I guess the big shiny documents and the things that are held up or put on the wall or in the lifts, but it's
That's right.
about how you can surface almost the context in which everyone needs to work, because you're having to show the constraints as well as the the catalysts, things that people can work with as well. And if people are aware of that, then they'll know what they've got to work with. And then all of a sudden you've got that psychological safety, because you think, okay, I understand this situation in which I'm operating, and I know what the goal is. And then if I know what my boss's goal is and I can translate that to my own, then I'm pretty comfortable. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that transparency. It's it's what you say and do. I mean, that sort of speaks to some authenticity and culture, but what you say and do, I'm expecting decisions that I'm seeing align to the big company vision. Now, if they don't, then I'm confused. So that's okay if you give the context, as you say, as to why we've had to make that decision, why we've had to pivot, or why we're not going ahead with this thing. Because when people don't know, I know that sometimes people feel like you might need to protect the staff or something, but when they don't know, it's just a growing frustration, because it's not computing. You said we're going to do this, but now you're saying this, or you said we're going to do this, but we're doing this thing that doesn't connect at all to this. So that communication is clear, of the transparency of that context. And then you can work together still, to assuming the big dream is still the same one. Okay, this, if it's that crappy thing that we have to deal with, that's okay. We're going to deal with the crappy thing together, rather than go, oh, wow, God, why are we doing this? Oh, leadership don't know what they're doing. There's suddenly all this negativity comes up. And maybe that's really hard. That's really hard to be vulnerable and clear like that, especially if you're in quite big companies that have press all over them and things like that. But if you want the people to not work harder, what's the word? Work smarter and come up with innovative solutions faster, and adapt and all that kind of stuff. Then when you have the full picture, you can do that. So that's what I used to say as well, I guess in whatever role I had, I would ask a lot of questions to get the full picture, because I want to know what I'm working with and how fast I can go, or what I need to do to get there. If you only give me a small slice of that, I can only work with the slice, and you don't get the pie. I have no idea what that analogy meant, but yeah, I'm only working with a slither. But really, the most that all organizations got out of me was when my boss or someone told me the bigger picture, the bigger barriers, I guess, or challenges. And also that helped me, I'm a proactive person. So I just go, all right, there's a bigger problem to solve. I'm not looking at my job description. I just think we should actually solve this. And back to what you're saying about, people with fixed mindsets, where they're like, oh, why is Sam coming into our area? The way I got around that was I just showed them what the benefits were to them, and I didn't expect anything in return, because I actually believed that it was the right thing to do. And then sort of, garner the people around to make it happen, essentially. So that's how that sort of had unfolded in my career.
Yeah, I mean, the slice of the pie is a great analogy, I think, because I'm like you, I need to see the picture and I need to know the facts to know where I stand in relation to that. It's also interesting just thinking about startup and scale up, and obviously huge, enterprise level organizations where
Mm.
some people choose to go into a very, I guess, sheltered role, and other
Mm.
people would choose to go into a highly transparent, highly exposed role where they can
Mm.
see all of that and
Mm.
influence a lot of that. But for a lot of people, that would be overwhelming. And it's probably the reason why big organizations, if you're talking the thousands of people, they have to start introducing all of these steps and processes and closed
Mm.
doors. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden, it's compartmentalized, and then you've got different departments doing things, and obviously
Mm.
there's a communication challenge
Mm.
immediately. It's probably why a lot of startup to scale up, they talk about the number of 50 staff and then going up. Why
Yes.
that's such a big deal, because all of a sudden people are having to work differently, and you can't be exposed to everything, because if you did, you wouldn't get any work done.
You'd never get work done.
So,
Exactly. And not saying that, yeah, it's a easy problem to solve, right? Like, and there's some things you just can't share. You just got to sort of make the right decisions that you think you need for the organization. But yeah, that's exactly why startups are so appealing, right? Because you get to have a piece of all the different pies. And it's like, and I actually had a recent, let's call it a business inquiry, and they sort of said, oh, so do you do product strategy or more business commercial? And I said, it's not one or the other. They're all intertwined. Like, you can't do a product strategy without knowing the business and commercial. And so, yeah, it was interesting. That person that sort of had that line of thinking. But yeah, it is hard, and which is why it's hard to find people aligned with values and purpose and things, because it is very difficult to execute. I can only sort of say, be as transparent as you can with what you can, to allow as much freedom and empowerment for your people to do what you need to do, I would say.
yeah, and finding the right people, right, that can get
Mm.
behind you or work with you.
That's
Have
right.
you?
And yeah, as you
Yeah,
say, well, like also certain champions, as you say, certain type of people want that kind of thing, and other people sort of want their more, just tell me, where I fit in, and I'll do that really, really well. And I've always been the type of person, well, I'm just generally a problem solver, but then, that problem is really part of a bigger problem, and part of a bigger problem, and a subset of problems. And next thing you know, we're in the low key spaghetti world of, timelines of all these problems. But I find it energizing. Some people might find that overwhelming, and they only want to work on one set of a problem, and you go, great, that person can work on that. Other people like me kind of want to see these different things. They get their energy in different ways. And again, I say that's why humans are amazing, because everyone's really different and motivated by different things. And if you draw that out, and we're all working on different things, or perfecting, or mastering whatever it is that you're working on, you have a really good combination to start off with.
yeah, and I think it's important for who you put in place and who you choose to work around, because
Mm.
ultimately within a working environment, you usually have some level of choice as
Mm.
to where you focus your effort, who you spend your
Yes.
most time with. And people are often, it's unconscious bias, but they're looking for people that can either affirm their own beliefs and actions,
Mm.
as opposed to challenge them a lot of the time, and that can
Mm.
lead to that kind of stale environment sometimes.
That's right.
People hire people that are very similar to them in skills
Mm.
and profile. All of that is happening. It's not
Mm.
helping diversity, and
Mm.
it's not really progressing the business a lot of the time either. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's your take on all of that?
Well, that when you said that, that totally reminded me of an interview I had. And I always used to go to interviews because I want to know my own value and things. But I remember someone saying to me, you are the loudest, most extroverted social research insights person I've ever met." And I knew I wasn't the typical profile. And I don't know, what they wanted or not want. I didn't think I was suited, because it seemed more like a science lab, I would call it. So I didn't think that I would be as embraced, actually. And this was like way early. But I guess over time, I just sort of leaned into my own uniqueness, I guess, and how I approach things, and just sold myself on that. And you can kind of take it or leave it. Like, I do come with a burst of energy, almost cyclone type, like, and if that's what you need, and then, that's for me. I also, I'm the type of person, like I said, energized by people. So, I'd sort of make a point of that. But I guess, even just what we've talked about today, I would just literally describe how I approach situations, how I approach people. There are some common themes, and then there's some things that, I just sort of try something new. And I definitely, because I would consider myself a generalist, I was started out in marketing, and then I didn't really go into agency account management too far. I didn't become a data scientist, but I dealt with analytics. I didn't become one particular thing. I wasn't like, I'm not qualified as a researcher, but know enough, but I wouldn't do a research role. So with all those things, it's sort of more, sort of like I'm a generalist, and this is how I approach things. The adaptability and flexibility I have can be a strength for a company or position. Or if you're looking for a more fixed role that needs this and that, then that's fine. But I guess I used to say, look, I'll pick up anything. I'm very curious and I like to learn stuff. So if I don't know something, this is how I'd attack it, and this is how I've done it before, and that's how I became a journalist in little different things. But I do find that is quite a strength these days. Maybe that's the roles that I've had where because I've got experts around me in my team. I got designers, I've got developers, I've got UX researchers, I've got loads of people. I don't need to know those things. I just need to know how to get the best out of the people, and collaborate with each other to get the best outcomes, and be very clear on what those are. Yeah. So, and I definitely felt, I remember when I joined one organization and I said to them, I walked in and I said to them, I have to be this, like I have to be my energetic social self to get the best out of me. I feel like what I'm observing in the culture is it's very flat and very quiet. And I don't want to be this loudmouth person that's actually going to piss people off. Maybe I'm not the right fit, but actually they hired me anyway. So I think they wanted the energy. So it's like, okay, I'm bringing it. So yeah, it's very interesting. And I think, again, it's what I expect when people interview me or approach me, I guess, is maybe they are looking for something different because what the cookie cutter thing hasn't worked out, and then they're needing someone with a bit of spark and a little bit of adaptability and flexibility. Look at, this is what I do. I go in, I look at what's there, and then I look at what we can improve and optimize, and then I look at the people and where they want to go and use that, and I just do that in every job basically. probably as a consultant as well, do exactly the same thing. And actually it's an enjoyable process and journey. Like I said, you get some wins and you don't see it all, but it's the joy of working with people, really.
I mean, the thing that I love is that you just put yourself out there, right? You're in the middle, like you're walking into the middle of, you're pretty much in that campfire position where everyone's just around you.
Yeah.
And you're engaging them in one way, and you're obviously understanding them. You're working with what's there. You don't always know walking into an organization, particularly as a new employee, what you're going to get until you do that. But you're just walking straight in there and doing it, which is great.
First things first. Get in there, get to know the people, get the vibe. How they're feeling about things. Things that happened in the past, what they were hoping, what they expect from me. And then at some point in that first month, I'll share my JD and I go, well, this is what they told me. But actually, after talking to everyone, I'm actually going to go back to them and maybe get them to change it a bit. And then a lot of that often surprises people. They're like, what? Like, after just chatting to us? And I'm like, yes, it's very important. What the company thought they were hiring or what they needed, I have made my own observations and talked to the people that count. Not that they don't count, but as in more people that, that probably weren't included in that process, to really refine what we really need to do. Now I'm more informed. So, and I want my, performance expectations, etc., to be very clear, back to whoever, I'm reporting to, back to the company and to the team. So yeah, it's, but that's what I enjoy. Right. So I just want to know what everyone's up to. How did you get here? What's your story? Oh, it's great.
Well, that's so good. I mean, maybe we can wrap up there, but before we do, for entrepreneurs like yourself, we've touched on a number of themes today, but what would be one thing that you'd say to other entrepreneurs that are trying to make waves, make change, or just feel comfortable in their roles?
One single piece of advice.
Or three.
Sorry, say again. Or three.
1 or 3 or 5. Pick a number. I don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, my thing is master the art of persuasion. And I mean that in the positive way. And I'm kind of cheating because when I say that, it's kind of like a catch-all for a lot of things, because the art of persuasion is, well, in my mind anyway, it's a lot of, like I said, knowing self-awareness of yourself, trying to empathize with the other people you're trying to convince to, do whatever you're doing as an entrepreneur. So there's lots of the empathy, finding common goals, getting your facts and your evidence and your credibility sorted, and also having the detail of the how. All of that has to be wrapped up in this art of persuasion that, by the way, no one person is the same. So turns out, I literally used to, when I first was exposed to this, I'll give her a shout, by the way, a lady called Michelle Bowden. I did this at Channel 7. It was really amazing. And I learned a lot of these things from her. But, when I first started out practicing the art of persuasion, once I got past the manipulation, I literally wrote in my notebook these things, what I wanted, the message I was trying to say, and, what I thought about. And sometimes I had the notes in front of me, but God damn, it actually worked. Like it works in emails, it works in conversations, it works in presentations. The more you master that awareness, I guess, you'll find it's actually an easier way to convince, because it's a people thing, it's a credibility thing, and then it's the actual solution. So I would just say, master the art of persuasion would be my advice for budding entrepreneurs.
Brilliant. All right, thanks so much, Sam. And where does all of this leave you? I mean, you've talked about some of the companies you've worked in. What do you want to do now or next, or do you want to share that?
Yeah, so I'm actually on my first ever career break after 20 plus or so years, which is actually really scary, and it's a different mindset after you've been sort of in a more corporate and startup. I worked at startup for 18 months as well. But it is weird not to have like a full-time role when you've been doing that for 20 plus years and having structure. So I'm in that time where I'm, I guess, a lot of self-reflection, exploring a whole new bunch of opportunities. And as you can imagine, my energy has kind of gotten the better of me, and I went kind of a bit crazy on all the things I could do. But I'm now starting to get a bit closer about what I'd like to do, and it'd probably be a lot more in consulting and product. Lots of career coaching and mentoring as well. I've established a network in that way. Maybe a bit of business coaching as well. So there's quite a few things I'm exploring, and love to hear from anyone if they want to reach out on LinkedIn and things and talk some more. But yeah, I think out of all of these experiences, I think I'd still actually bring a lot of that approach and my authenticity and energy to them. But I guess I'm looking for, I guess the flexibility in consulting sort of gives you, sort of that transparency is really clear of what you're trying to do. And, I'd still love to energize and motivate teams if I'm consulting in places as well. But yeah, it's sort of trying to find something new. And that's where I'm at. So I'm excited by that.
Very exciting. Well, we can't wait to hear about what happens next in the ongoing chapters of Sam Yi. But it's been, an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and really appreciate the chat today. Thanks so much, Sam.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's it for this episode. If you're hearing this message, you've listened all the way to the end. So thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave us a review and share this episode with your friends, team members, leaders, if you think it'll make a difference. After all, we're trying to help you, the entrepreneurs, kick more goals within your organizations. If you have any questions about the things we covered in the show, please email me directly at chris@companyroad.co. I answer all messages, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And to hear about the latest episodes and updates, please head to companyroad.co to subscribe. Tune in next Wednesday for another new episode.